Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, Winning the SEO Game. I'm hoping that you can all hear me and that everything is going according to plan. If I can ask you very kindly to just give me a thumbs up or something in the chat, just so I know that you guys can all hear me. We've got a lot to get through today, so I am going to be getting straight into it, but I just want to make sure that my audio is actually recording. Excellent. Thank you so much, Sharon. Really appreciate you letting me know nice and clear. That's what we like to hear. Now, I will let you know today's webinar is on a topic, SEO, so search engine optimization, which a lot of people have heard of, but they actually don't know anything about. So it is going to get quite technical, and there may be some stages where you think, oh my goodness, how am I going to understand this? You will get a copy of this recording. So it will be that you will be able to come back to it and you'll be able to listen to it again and pick up on those little things that maybe you couldn't quite understand as we were going through today. I do give a lot of value in this webinar. We go through 10 very technical points of how you can win the SEO game. And if there's nothing more that I like to do with this webinar, it's open up everybody's eyes to the fact that it's not as easy as everyone thinks it is, and you do have to have a lot of factors right to get it right. So without further ado, we might actually get going. I would like to thank very much, obviously this webinar is part of the Australian Small Business Advisory Services Program, a program that is very close to our heart. And I'd like to thank Business Station, Regional Development Australia and Treaty Business Consulting for bringing us this amazing federal government program. It allows business owners to actually receive education like this at an extremely affordable rate. And at the moment, these webinars have been free. So it's a really great incentive, and we're really proud to be a part of it. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Kerrie Saverin. I'm the co-founder of Altitude Business Solutions. I'm a digital business consultant. I've got over 20 years management experience, and I'm currently the president of the Beenleigh-Yatala Chamber of Commerce. So that just puts a face to the name for you so that you know a little bit about me. Now, if you have any questions, I will be stopping at the end to give an opportunity to answer some questions. However, please feel free to put them in the chat. I know what it's like. You have a question and you think, I won't remember it when I get to the end. So just type it into the chat and then I'll review those questions over time, keeping in mind that we do have a lot of information to cover, and we may very well cover your question at some stage throughout the presentation. So you're in the right place if you're ready to have a clearer understanding of exactly what search engine optimization is and how you might be able to improve it for your business or website or etc. So why does SEO matter? Well, it matters more than ever. If you want to get traffic to your website, or if you want to get people knowing about your brand, it's essential to understand search engine optimization. Now, if you understand it, SEO is the process of optimizing your website, so your pages, your blog posts, and more for search engines like Google. So there's a few search engines out there. So, I'll cover the Google, the Bing. Some people could actually call Facebook and also Pinterest a search engine now. So search engine is where you are thinking, I want to know about something, and you jump on and you search for it pretty much. So if you understand it and you do it right, you can get really significant amounts of traffic from search engines into your website. So when people use Google to search for a specific term or topic, your site will be one of the ones that shows up near the top of the results. So, and people tend to click on the ones that are close to the top. So it sounds really simple, but it's obviously a little bit more complex, which is why we're having this today. So the general concept behind SEO is simple, but it's a little bit more complicated, which makes sense when there are trillions and trillions of web pages out there. So, when we first started with the internet, even going back as far as just 5 years, the amount of content that was on the web has just quadrupled, even more so in the last 5 years. So Google has to be able to understand each of those pages, and it has to make sure that it gives the searcher, so somebody who's searching for something on Google, it gives them the relevant information that they're looking for. This is Google's whole entire business. If you were searching for green frogs and you ended up on a page about steel cap boots, then it's not in Google's best interest to be sending you to the wrong pages. It gives them no power. And Google has power, of course. They can charge advertising to businesses, they can do all of those things. So it's in their best interest that they send people to the sites that are relevant to the search that they are looking for. However, if you're not telling Google what information is actually on your page, it's just simply not going to send anybody there. So it's to make your, SEO is to make your website stand out from everything else. You want to make your site as appealing as possible to Google with all the information on there. The more appealing it is, the more it will be shown to searchers and the more traffic that you'll get. I will mention at this stage that search engine optimization is a long game. You can't just sort of build a website and jump on and expect to be number one from day one. It does take a lot of content and a little bit of time for you to be able to get there. So if you're in for the long game, you're in for the rewards. So to understand SEO, it's important to understand how Google works. So the search engine is an incredibly complex, and Google is notoriously secretive about exactly how it works. But over the years, they've revealed a fair bit of information, key information. So at the core, Google exists, as I said, to return relevant information to its searchers. And we trust that most of the time it'll return the information that we're looking for. I don't know if you remember years ago, you'd search for something on Google and you'd get something completely different and you'd sort of go, oh, and they've really improved their algorithms and how they do things to change that. I know myself, I always will jump onto Google and find the answer that I'm looking for now. As I said to you, if they're returning the wrong kind of searches, people are simply not going to use them. So in order to make users happy, Google is always trying to find the best and most relevant information for them. But if you're not telling them the information, then it's really hard for them to be able to do that. Now, the Google algorithm uses over 200 different factors when evaluating pages. So these factors help Google to determine which pages to return in the search results. So when you enter a search term in Google, it's just amazing to think that it's actually evaluating millions of pages to get them into a ranking factor, to find the best results for what it is that you are looking for. So in simple terms, pages with higher scores are listed higher in the search results than pages with lower scores. That's pretty much as simple as it is. The better a page is, according to all of the different ranking factors that Google has, the higher it is in the search results. So I want you to think of ranking factors like a set of tick boxes. If you're searching for green frogs, does it have information about green frogs on it? Tick. Is it easy to read? Tick. So it has all of that, and we're going to be going through some of these today. And as you would expect, not all of the ranking factors are equal. There are ones that actually, if you have them optimized, get you better results than others. So the important Google ranking factors are backlinks, page speed, content freshness, depth and accuracy, mobile friendliness, and security. So they're the main ones. And a lot of these terms you might be thinking, oh, I don't understand any of these. Well, in this webinar, we're going to explore each of these factors, what they mean for your website in particular. And by the end, you'll have a much greater sense of how SEO works, along with specific action steps that you can take to increase the amount of search traffic that your website is currently receiving. So it all sounds like gibbly-goosh at the moment, but hopefully I will be able to, in the next hour, pull it all down and make it make a little bit more sense for you. So one of the most important, I'm going to start with number one. We've got 10 of these to get through in the next 15 minutes. So one of the most important Google ranking factors is search intent. So behind every search, there's intent. In other words, when you type a search into Google, you're looking for something specific. You want to know how to make a certain recipe, or the height of the Eiffel Tower, or most recent soccer scores. Google always seeks to return the best results, the ones that most closely match that your search that the person is looking for. And they're searching for pages that closely match what it is that the person wants, and the ones that are ranking higher. If you want to get search traffic to your website, you must optimize your pages. In other words, if you want them to contain information that people are actually searching for on the internet. For example, I'm just going to say that you maintain like a DIY site. Everyone's into DIY. I've been watching The Block a little bit too much lately. So on it, like if you have a step-by-step tutorial for installing a light switch, or if you have relevant content to DIY, then that information is going to show up in searches and it will match it with more people. So what we want to do is we want to optimize your page for search intent, to have the information on there. And how do we do that? Well, there's a few things that we can do. Now, you may have all heard of this keyword research, but you may not necessarily know what it is. So keyword research is the process of finding relevant keywords and phrases that have a high monthly search volume. So if we're talking for DIY, obviously different times of year pull back different keyword research as well. We're coming into Christmas, so there might be DIY Christmas ideas, etc. But when you include the relevant keywords in your content, it really helps Google to understand your website and understand what your site is all about. So if you just have a one-page website that doesn't really give them any information, then it's really hard. So you need to do some keyword research. So how do you do that? Well, you can use some tools. These are some tools that I'm suggesting. So Ubersuggest is one, SEMrush is another, Longtail Pro, and Keyword Surfer. Now, most of these for keyword research tools actually have a free version of it. I'm just going to go with Ubersuggest because it's at the top, but I think you get 3 free searches a day. So you get 3 free searches a day with Ubersuggest before they're asking you to sign up to some sort of plan. So this is where you can directly enter in words and phrases to just get an idea of what the monthly volume is. So if you were to enter that, I'm just going to stick with the DIY theme because I've started that. So if you were to enter the phrase DIY into, say, Ubersuggest, then you can see the keyword monthly volume. So this is the report that it would actually pull up. So I actually searched the word I just put in DIY. You can see the one at the top there. And this is telling me that that particular term has a monthly volume of 9,900 searches. CPC stands for cost per click. So if you were doing some sort of advertising through Google, then that's the cost per click that you can expect for that particular search, so the DIY search. And it gives you an idea of what people are actually searching for. But it also gives you an idea of, you know, other terms that are ranking higher, that are ranking high, but don't rank too high. You need to think DIY. There's going to be hundreds of thousands of articles and information that relate to DIY. But this is where you need to niche it down and you need to be very specific. So you'll notice a different one here, DIY blinds. Still pretty high, but it's got less. DIY Christmas decorations, popular term at the moment, but not all year round. DIY face mask, DIY Halloween costumes. Now, obviously, some of these are not relevant to the DIY we might be talking about. DIY projects, DIY Christmas gifts. So it's giving you some suggestions of, well, look, here's some popular terms that people are actually searching for, but you can see the difference between the one at the top, which has got a volume search per month of 9,900, and the one at the bottom where it's got 1,900. Now, the difference is also that you were going to have a lot less competition with the one at the bottom. So if you had information on your site about DIY Christmas gifts, there's a much better chance of you ranking in that #1 spot because you're going to have a lot less competition. Yes, there's less people searching for it, but you are also going to have a lot less competition. So the more competition that there is, and normally the more people that are searching for it, because of tools like this, people know, then the harder it is going to be for you to rank on page 1. The really cool thing about a lot of these tools, and I will tell you as well, is if you use Ubersuggest, you can actually search your own website. So our website, for example, is altitudebusinesssolutions.com.au. So if we were to put that in as something that we're going to search and give results on, it will actually tell you what pages you are ranking for on Google already. So it will tell you the most popular ones. And it's really interesting to see, how did I rank for that? How did that one little article that I wrote, or that one little thing that I put, and now I'm ranking for it, like I'm coming up for it. So that can be really cool to actually work with as well. And as I said, with Ubersuggest, you get three free searches per day before they're saying, hey, you know, you have to pay, or here's something that you need to sign up to. So 3 is plenty. Now, your goal is to find keywords that have a relatively high search volume and relatively low levels of competition. So you're also given, you know, a list of other things that you could actually rank for as well. Now, I know this is getting a little bit technical, but this is about the research phase. Remember, we're looking at, okay, well, what can I put on my site that's going to help me to get ranking? So you guys obviously wouldn't search DIY if you're not a DIY business, but you would search for what your niche is. And then you would have a look and say, okay, so what could we possibly put on our site to do with that particular subject? If I was wanting to rank for DIY Halloween costumes, what am I going to put on my site for DIY Halloween costumes that's going to get me in the #1 spot? So when we're coming up to Halloween, I'm coming up for that search. So once you've identified a number of relevant keywords and phrases, you need to sprinkle them appropriately and naturally throughout your website or page. It's important that you don't try to cram in as many keywords as possible. So you may have heard from this in the past, that if you wanted to rank for DIY, that you just simply put DIY, DIY, DIY. There was all sorts of tricks that you used to be able to play on Google, particularly before 2015, where you could put DIY in the same coloured writing as the background of your website. So if you had a white background, you could put white writing on there, no one would ever see it, and you would just put DIY, DIY, DIY on there millions of times. Those days are gone. Google has woken up to this. If you are not having people coming to your site that are staying there and reading the article and reading the information, then you're not going to rank higher. It's known as keyword stuffing. You may have heard that term. I call it keyword stuffing, and it's really frowned upon by Google, and it will hurt your page because they'll just put it to the bottom if they feel that that's what you're doing. So what you need to do is, when you think of your keyword, so if you're a DIY, you need to make sure that you are putting that information onto your page. So putting it in the title, of the page, making sure DIY is there. Making sure DIY is used in the first 100 words of any wording that is on that page. You know, when you search and it brings up a page and it has a little kind of, 100 words to give you a description, that's where you want your DIY in there. Needs to also be in the subheading as well. So if you are familiar with the subheading of a website page, it is the heading that either you're putting yourself or your coder puts in. So if you're building your own website and you're using platforms like GoDaddy or Wix or any of those, there's a little SEO section that you need to get to on each page, and that's where you can enter in your subheading. And also, like, naturally sprinkled throughout it as well. I think Google is smart. You don't need to go overboard on your keywords. It's about relevant information. Use them enough so that it's clear what your page is about, but not so much that it's cluttering everything up. Now, the second thing that is going to help you with your search engine optimization is a thing called backlinks. Now, backlinks is when another website links to your website. The more backlinks a page has, the more authoritative and trustworthy it is. So if another site is actually recommending your site by having a link to it, then Google sees that as you being a bit of authority in the subject as well. So when Google sees that a page has a lot of backlinks, it's a signal to them that a lot of people value the page and its good content. So pages with lots of backlinks, they will show up much higher in any rankings naturally because they are more authoritative and trustworthy in the eyes of Google. So one caveat to this is that backlinks need to come from relevant sites. And I love this little image because irrelevant, it's so true. So if you run a site, say about jogging, and you get a backlink from a site about exercise, well, that's a relevant link. So, you know, the contents of both sites are actually related. If you get a backlink from a site about fish tanks and you're about exercise, well, that's not relevant. It's not going to carry much value in Google's eyes. They might even think that the link is a little bit spammy, which could hurt the ranking of your page as well. The starting place for getting backlinks is creating outstanding content for starters. So you need to have content on your website for people to actually be able to link to. There are literally millions of new pages published on the internet every day. And if you want people to link to your page, then you need to give them a good reason to do so. You need to create valuable content that people will actually want to link to. It needs to be quotable, engaging, friendly, shareable, interesting. I love this slide. It sort of gives everything that you need to have in a relevant. It needs to be clear, memorable. So great content covers a subject more thoroughly than any other piece. It's authoritative, so it talks about facts and studies. So you writing an article that has links to university studies, etc., things like that, that can really help as well. And it's easy to consume and easy to read, and it's well designed, and it is up to date. This is a big thing. One of the questions I get asked, particularly if we're talking about blogs, is do you go back and update your blogs? Absolutely, yes, we do. Particularly if the information has changed or the information has been updated. So if we wrote an article about building a Facebook page back in 2009, it would look a lot different than what it would today, because that process has completely changed. So you do need to go back and you do need to update. So if you want to get some backlinks, let's take a look at what is currently ranking in the search results for a specific keyword. That's what I would say to you. So when we were looking at the DIY, you know, it gave us some suggestions for Christmas DIY or something along those lines. There is another, and just jot this down, there is another site that's really useful. It's called Ask the Public. You do get a number of free searches on there a day. So if you are, for example, a website builder, you can type in website, and Ask the Public will give you all of the searches that people have made in relation to websites. So exactly what questions they are asking. Like one of the questions might be, how do you build a website? So you might write a blog about how you build a website. So that's just an example for you of, but Ask the Public, it's really good. If you're looking for topics for running webinars or going and doing a talk, it's really great for that kind of thing as well. So what steps can you take to create superior content? Well, if you're not willing to put in the work to create high value material, then you're going to struggle to get backlinks, basically. It needs to be high value, and it also needs to have the relevant information. So at its core, link building is all about finding strategic ways to promote your content. I mean, after all, you want people to link to your content, so you need to promote it. So they need to see it first. They need to know that it's valuable. And there's a number of effective ways to do promotion. And Sharon, this will probably answer your question in relation to how you get backlinks, which I can see there. So outreach is one way. So outreach, find websites in the same niche as yours. So ones that aren't necessarily competition, but are in the same kind of field. And connect with the owner of that site. So either send them an email or contact them in some way. and ask if they would be willing to link to your content on their site. Now, obviously, this is a little bit like the cold calling strategy. It's not something that everybody is going to want to do. Now, you have to make sure that you don't do this in a non-spammy way. So you have to make sure that there's value for them as well as value for you for doing so. You could do a guest post. So find a relevant site that allows guest posts in your niche and ask them to guest post, and in your post include a link back to your own site. That's a clever one. So if you can find somebody and you can say, look, I think, we have quite complementary things to offer. I know what writing blogs can be like on a regular basis. What if I was to write you a little article about X and, just have a link in there to be able to link them back to my website if they wanted more details? The person may more than likely go, oh gosh, just 1 week, I don't have to write a blog. That's great. So just make sure whatever arrangement you have with that person that you're following the instructions carefully. And appearing on podcasts. This is a really good one because podcasts are a really big thing at the moment. So find a relevant podcast about what it is that you do and ask to be a guest on that podcast. Because when they advertise the podcast, they will put a link to your website. So there's a backlink. So you're being seen as an expert because you're a guest on a podcast, and then they're linking back to your website as well. Now I can already hear a lot of you shaking in your boots. I tend to find this is the promoting of your content, getting those backlinks can often be an uncomfortable process for a lot of business owners. But those backlinks are going to make such a huge difference to your ranking that when you look at those top rankings, I can guarantee you they've got backlinks on there. They've done the work. They've done the uncomfortable stuff to get their information out there and get it promoted by other people, essentially. So number 3 is your page speed. I'm just checking on time, 10:30, we've got half an hour. So page speed is about how fast your page loads in a browser, and these days page speed is increasingly important when it comes to Google. We've all been to one of those websites where it just takes forever to load a page. So think about it from Google's perspective. If they send searches to a page that takes a long time to load, those searches, they're not going to be happy. They're like, oh my God, this is taking forever. People want to see results quickly these days. And if a page is too slow to load, then they'll click on another page or they'll leave the site. And once you start doing that, if Google sends people to your page and they start leaving quickly, they will no longer send people to your page. To get a sense of how your site performs in the speed category, there's a free tool that you can use. It's called Test My Site. It will analyze your site and tell you how it's performing and give you specific recommendations for speeding it up. So make a note of that one. Test My Site. It is a Google tool, and it's really good. So some things that you can do, just 3 quick things that you can do. Compressing your images. So large images on web pages dramatically increase the time it takes to load. And a very simple way to increase your page speed is to automatically compress your images. So if you are there's tools that you can do this. You can search on Google for compress images. You can upload an image and re-download it so that it's smaller. If you are using Canva for your images and you download out of Canva, you'll notice when you select the PNG feature, there is an option for you to compress the image if you're using the Pro version. So that will just make the images on there a lot smaller and make them much easier and quicker to load. So implement browser caching. So when a person visits your site, all of the elements of your site or your website loads, such as the images, the HTML code, everything that they need. So enabling browser caching means that the process is a lot quicker. So it means that when people have visited your site before, there will be automatically things that will automatically load really quickly, and that's what you want. And minify the HTML. This is getting a little bit technical. So for those of you who don't know what HTML is, that's another whole discussion. I'm going to suggest that you Google that. So when a person visits your site, the HTML code must be loaded in and interpreted by the browser. So essentially, So decreasing the amount of HTML that is loaded into your site means that it loads a lot quicker. And like I said, this does get a little bit technical when you go through it, but if you're not building your own site, if you've had someone build your site for you, it will give you the terminology to go back and speak to your developer. If you don't know the terminology, you can Google it and you can find out more information about it. In recent years, Google has started using a machine learning algorithm. So number 4 is about user experience. Now this algorithm is called RankBrain. I don't know who came up with that, RankBrain, to determine whether a user is satisfied with the search results that they received. So pages that show a high user satisfaction are ranked higher in the searches. So user experience is really, really important. And we're only up to number 4. What am I saying? They're all important. We've got 10 of them to get through. So what RankBrain does is it looks at the user experience signals to determine whether a particular page is satisfying to them or not. So basically, as I was saying earlier, it looks at how people interact with your page. Do they interact? Are they there for 5 seconds and they leave? So how people interact with a page, that tells Google what it needs to know about the ranking. So if Google sees that people are interacting with your site in a positive way, that they are going to other pages on your website, they are staying for longer periods of time, then it will naturally rank your page higher in search results. You'll get more search traffic. So how does Google know if people are having a positive experience? Well, it looks at a number of different things, including what's called click-through rates and dwell time. Just mentioned them very briefly, but dwell time is the amount of time that they spend on your page. And the click-through rate is the number of click-throughs that your page gets. So a click-through rate, as I said, it's the percentage of people who see your sites in search results. So if 100 people see your site and only 3 of them click through to it, well, then that's a 3% click-through rate. So if I'm a DIY person, and I've searched something to do with DIY and your page, your web page has come up and I've chosen to click on it, then I am a click-through rate statistic. But if I've given 4 options and I don't click on yours, then your click-through rate is going to be a lot lower. So if a page has a high click-through rate, that means when Google shows it to somebody as an option for their search and people are clicking on it, then you will be seen higher and higher in the search results. So improving, how do you improve your click-through rate? Well, you can start by optimizing your page title, making sure that it's attention grabbing so that it stands out in the search results. You don't want it to be boring. We spoke very briefly about page descriptions before, but if your title's boring and bland, it doesn't matter what your description is. People won't click through. Your title should make it clear that the page definitely contains the information that they're looking for and it's worth clicking on because it's a bit of fun. So optimizing your page description, which is the next lot of text that will show up in any search results under your title, needs to be both clear, it needs to be clear and compelling. And you need to make sure that you've got your primary keyword in there as well. I mean, obviously that's important. So even if it's a subject about something else, you put your primary keyword in there as well. And the third is optimize your page URL. Now, for those of you who don't know what URL is, it's the address that is in your website that people go to. Make it short and sweet. Don't make it too long, particularly if you're writing blogs. I know we've got this problem on our site, I'll be honest with you. When you write a blog and you publish it on most sites, the website will naturally pick up the title of the blog. So if the title of your blog is, 7 effective ways to buy a sports car, then essentially the URL address would be altitudebusinesssolutions.com.au/7 effective ways to buy a sports car. So it's a little bit long. So having short and sweet URLs really does make a difference, and that's something that we really need to look at with our blogs. So number 5, content freshness, accuracy, and depth. So Google cares very much about giving searchers the right content. As we said, it is their business. So content freshness If a search is time sensitive, it's important that it be fresh and updated. Like we said, there's no use having old information on there. If someone searches for current, AFL scores or something, they want the most relevant information. They don't want last year's AFL scores. They don't want the ones from 6 months ago. So making sure that things are updated is very important. So that comes down to your freshness. Content accuracy. So Google does their best to make sure that the information they show in their search results is accurate. And they do this in several different ways, which we've already sort of touched on. They compare information against, different knowledge and all sorts of things. But there's also evidence that Google relies on a number of trusted resources to verify information. So making sure that your content is accurate, linking through to other sites as well. To give you an example for that, I'm just trying to think of something that we've linked through to. So if we had written a blog on making sure that business owners know their numbers, printing out regular profit and loss statements every month and reading through profit and loss statements, we might link through to an article on the Australian ATO government website, which talks about how to read a profit and loss statement. So we would put a backlink into there. So Google favors that as well. If you're referring to reputable sites, it's helping with your content accuracy. So content depth, the more thoroughly that you can cover a subject, the greater odds you have of ranking in the top search results. So we're not talking about length. We're not talking about the number of words. People often ask the question, if I'm writing a blog, how many words? How many words should I have? Around about 2,000, they say, is great. And let me tell you, when you're writing about a subject that you know, it doesn't take much to get to 2,000 words. You're not writing an essay. And blogs can be very different to an essay. They need to be easily readable. They need to feel like someone's having a conversation with you as opposed to writing about a subject. But the more thoroughly you cover a subject, then the more likely Google is to rank you higher as well. Number 6, site authority. Now, I'm gathering a lot of you haven't probably heard of these ones. They are quite technical, but some websites carry more authority than others. For example, when it comes to medical issues, so you would obviously, there would be more authoritative medical sites than others. That's what comes down to your site authority. Now, the first key to authority is backlinks, which we've already spoken about. So having other people that see you as the authority and backlink to it, we've already, Google just loves that. Another key authority is topical expertise. So Google knows that no one can be an expert in everything. They prefer sites that actually focus in on being an authority in one particular area. So this is where you need to really niche down what it is that you do. I'll give you an example for, what would I say? Let's stick with the DIY theme. So I'll give you an example for DIY. DIY is a massive category. What sort of DIY are you talking about? But if I'm talking about a DIY for bathrooms, I've niched it right down that I'm the expert for DIY on bathrooms, and everything on my site is going to be related to DIY and bathrooms. So that when someone searches DIY bathrooms, there is that much content on my website and that much information I'm seen as the authority. Now, if you want to get your pages ranking in search results, you need to focus on developing and demonstrating your expertise in lots of different ways. So, as I said, avoid trying to cover too many different subjects, focus in on one thing. The more valuable your content is, the more others will link to it. And the more others link to it, the more authority you have, and the more Google will actually raise your ranking. So it really is about gaining momentum. So it's not just one thing that is going to get you in that top search ranking. There's a number of things that will get you there. So it's getting that momentum going and doing a few things. So number 7, security and mobile friendliness. This is really important. Particularly mobile friendliness. You know, unfortunately what happens is websites are built on a desktop, and they don't always transfer really well over to mobile. So if you've built your own website and you're using sites like GoDaddy, Wix, people don't realize they sit there and they build this amazing site, and then they don't. Why, when I look it up on Google, is it, on my mobile phone, does it not work properly? What's going on? There's actually 2 different sides to it. You need to actually build it on the desktop, but then check out what it looks like on mobile for mobile friendliness. It is about, yes, Sharon, it is about having a responsive site on mobile, but it's also about the layout as well. You need to be careful, because with some of your website builders, what you see on your desktop does not transfer very well over to mobile. So you have to be able to, make sure it looks great on mobile as well. So if these things aren't in place, then, people are not going to like your website. So when it comes to security, Google takes the security of its Googles really seriously. They don't want to send people to an insecure site where data could be breached. If you use the Chrome browser, for example, you may have gotten a not secure warning that comes up when trying to go to a specific page, and this is an example of that. The warning is shown on sites where the data between the browser and the server is not encrypted. There's a bit of technical jargon for you, but how do you know if your site is secure? So a simple way is to have a look at your URL bar. So when you go to your web address on Chrome, for example, depending on the browser you use, but you should either see something like HTTPS before the web address, or a secure icon. So it sort of looks like a little padlock. So I think Chrome actually shows the little padlock because it doesn't show that HTTPS from memory. It has the little padlock there. So the old, it used to be HTTP. Some websites are HTTP. The S stands for secure. So HTTPS, secure. So if your site isn't secure, you can make it secure by using something that's called an SSL certificate, or getting an SSL certificate. So depending on, if you've purchased your domain and your website build from the same company, you obviously just get it from there. Otherwise, your domain provider will be able to sell you an SSL certificate as well. And then mobile friendliness. This is pretty self-explanatory, but it needs to be mobile friendly. It looks good on mobile. It's easy for people to use. You think about using it, going to a website on a mobile phone, which 85% of people do now. There needs to be more buttons. It needs to be really quick and easy. It doesn't need to be very wordy. I don't want to be scrolling and seeing lots and lots of words. If I'm going to a blog, that's a different story. If I'm going to a blog, I'm wanting words. That's what I'm looking for. I'm going to the homepage of your website. I want it to be easy. I just want it to be a series of what it is that you do. That's great. Now, how do I use, where do I get to where I want to be? So one way to see how your site performs on a mobile phone is to go to Google Search Console. That's another tool that Google has as well. And have a look at the mobile usability report. And Google Console is free. It's another, I know, talking lots of tools today, but Google Console is a great tool. You'll see if there's any mobile issues with your site on that as well. So number 8, structured data. So many web pages have text on them that's easy for people to understand, but it's tough for Google to actually make sense of. For example, you may have a product page that features things like prices and availability, all that kind of stuff, but Google can't really understand that information unless you structure it in a specific way that it can. So structured data is a specific code that you put on your page that helps Google understand the content. So again, we're getting a little bit technical with this one here. But the types of structured data, you know, I mean, if you implement structured data correctly, it'll show directly in the search results. You know, for example, if you've ever searched for a recipe and seen things like bake time ratings, you know, like it takes X amount of minutes to bake. Now that's a result that's structured on data being implemented. I am going to mention to you here the types of structured data on the screen. So you've got books, movies, courses, rating, events, local business expo, info, recipes, and much more. I'm going to touch on events because obviously both the ASBAS program and also myself, when I have my own events, I use Eventbrite. Eventbrite ranks very well from a Google perspective. So in my title and description of my Eventbrite, whatever I'm doing, webinar or workshop, if I can put a number of things in that title, like my name, my business name, and what it's about. So, you know, 2-hour workshop on building a website with Kerrie Saverin from Altitude Business Solutions, that is going to help with the ranking of Altitude Business Solutions. It's going to help with the ranking of Kerrie Saverin. Don't think that people aren't Googling your name. When you go to networking events, if you're a business owner that goes to networking events, the number one thing that people do if they're interested in you, the first thing they'll do is Google your name. Normally because they're looking for your LinkedIn profile, but you need to be, you know, Google yourself, have a look at what comes up. I used to be a real estate agent. So I'm in the process of putting as many images over the net as I can with my name attached to them so I can get rid of a lot of those houses. I have more pictures of myself so that people know what I'm about. I'm not about real estate anymore. I've moved on. So number 9, optimize for voice search. This is a really good one. Since the introduction of voice assistants like Siri, Alexa, Google, voice search has really just exploded in the last few years. So instead of typing in their searches, you know, people will just say, you know, hey Alexa, search for this. So in order to optimize your voice search, think about how most people will use it. So it's done in the form of a question. So just to give you an example, you know, how old is Paul Newman? What time is the movie playing? Is ice water good for dogs? When did the Beatles break up? I'm essentially asking a question like I would ask a question in a conversation. And this is where Ask the Public comes in really handy because it gives you those questions that people are asking. So you can write blogs on it. You can add that wording into your website. So the best way to optimize for voice search is to include content that can be pulled by Google and to give the answer to a question. That's the easiest way to be pulled for that. So having a frequently asked questions page, either a frequently asked questions page or frequently asked questions on your website is really important. So these pages, they're usually short and sweet answers. They're specific to a question. That's exactly what Google's looking for when returning a voice search result. You know, where Siri says something like, you know, here's what I found on the web for flying ducks. So right naturally, Google wants voice search results to sound natural. So they favor content that is written naturally. So we were talking about writing a blog and writing it more as a conversation. So avoid being stiff and formal and try being a little bit playful with your writing as well. And keep it simple. I'll be honest with you, the average search results, voice search results, they tend to be around like grade 5 kind of reading level. You know, avoid using technical jargon or complex words. I mean, that's why a lot of the times we break things down. Search engine optimization, SEO. How many people do you think search, you know, Google what's search engine optimization? Not many. Most people hear SEO and they go, Google, what's SEO? That's what they're searching for. So keeping it very simple. And number 10, which I've already touched on a little bit, is be in it for the long game. SEO is not a short game type of thing. It's not a, I fixed up a few things on my website and I'm still not getting any results. It's constant. You know, you do have to be putting updated information there regularly and updating your page, even if it's just a little bit of information. You know, think about what's happening in the news or what's happening around the world. Make sure you're putting information on things that people will be wanting to search for and relating it back to what it is that you do as a business. Obviously, 2020 has been a surprising year, something that we couldn't have expected. You can imagine the Google searches that have happened in the last, 8 to 12 months. What is coronavirus? How do I bring my business back after coronavirus? So lots of different content there. The effort is worth it. If you can continue to put information out on your website that people are wanting, it really is worth doing. And particularly when you get a little bit down the track, you'll find that it just starts to happen naturally, that you don't have to then think, well, what am I going to post or how am I going to post? You'll start to just do it, and it will just become part of your everyday routine, like it is for us. So as some SEO techniques that we've sort of been through is, optimizing for search intent. So thinking about what keywords you can have, having backlinks from other sites, improving your page speed, creating a good user experience, create content that is fresh and accurate and in-depth. So all of these things we've kind of been through today. Now we've sort of got to the end of this this webinar today, and let me check on time. Oh, look, we've got 5 minutes. So you might have some questions that you are wanting to ask, or I've probably, if you don't have questions, I've probably absolutely bamboozled you with all of the technical jargon. You're going to have to listen to this 5 times before you get it. But here's what I would say to you if you're looking for a simple way to start with your SEO journey is start writing a blog. The majority of websites, it's really easy to write a blog. And just commit to, remember, you're an expert in your field. Whatever your niche is, whatever your field is, you're an expert in that. So just start writing natural. Just start writing naturally. Should each image on your website have SEO? Absolutely, it should, yes. So there's a little thing on your images that go onto your website called alt text. ALT text, alt text. So that is where you can actually enter in information about words against what that picture is about. So that when someone searches for something on Google, you know how you search for something and then you go images, so the image will come up against whatever's relevant. I tend to do a few things with my images. So the words that I will put in will always be, what the image is about, or the article that it's relating to. So if I've written we build websites. So if I've written an article on websites, then one of the words will be website, then it will be Altitude Business Solutions, then it will be Kerrie Saverin. So that if someone searches either my name, my business name, or website, then that image should come up in the search results. So yes, you should make sure that your images have the alt text in it. And yeah, that can make a huge difference to what's coming up as well. So we do have our next free webinar, which is coming up next Friday, the 11th of December, how to write a highly effective business plan. This is quite a good one as well. I'm just going to put the link into the chat for you so that you've got it there. I'm so happy that a lot of these webinars at the moment are free. Obviously, after everything that's happened this year, the federal government decided to put more money into the ASBAS program. So these 1 hour webinars can be really, really handy for people, to get the information through. The 2 hour workshops are very in depth. The 2 hour workshops are great. They're very in depth. There's an opportunity for you to actually work during those 2 hours as well. And we're still doing those online. So there's a few options for you if you're in Western Australia, Northern Territory, or Queensland. If you're in Australia, I know we have a number of overseas people who are on here today. But the ASBAS program is really fantastic. You can have one-on-one sessions from $66, attend workshops from $25. They're 2-hour workshops. They're very interactive and you learn a lot. Or at the moment, our webinars are free. So it's a really great program. So I hope you got a lot out of that today. I really, you know, I like to think that I can make things sound a little bit easier. I'm glad it's been so helpful. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. I did cover a lot in an hour. You're right. It is. Sometimes it's a little bit overwhelming when I see the amount of stuff that I go through in an hour. But I like to give you a lot. I like to make sure that you have the content there. You can always refer back to it. You will get a copy of the recording. So thank you so much for joining me this morning. I really appreciate it. And please book in for that next webinar. Even if you think you know how to do that, then, you know, put that in there. We'd love to actually see you. I can see I've actually put the wrong address in there now that I'm saying that. So I will just quickly search that address for you. I've put in a link to an old webinar that I did. You did my Canva class too, did you? Oh, thanks, Annie. I'm glad. I really, you know, I'm mad for Canva. I can't get enough for Canva at the moment. But, you know, all of the lots of different things that it has in relation. There is another Canva class coming up. I'll make sure that you get the information on that. So the January workshops and webinars are going to be hitting very soon. Here we go. Here's that link to the next webinar. That's actually the right one. So how to write a highly effective business plan. There will be another one coming up, another Canva class coming up. So our January events are all about to go in. So over the next couple of weeks, you'll see all them go up as well. And once you've been to one of these, you normally get information from RDA Brisbane or Business Station or Treaty, depending on what state you're in relation to all of these events that are coming up. So thanks, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I will be talking to you all soon.